All right, everybody. Well, this is very exciting, actually, to look at a second in the genre of what is Valentine horror or just horrors based on Valentine's Day, right? And like I said, we are in March, but I am playing catch up, and I just like to remind you all. So when you're like, wait, but we're in St. Patrick's Day, trust me, we're getting on to the St. Patty's Day horrors, which is going to be really great. But we're kicking it off with Valentine. So we already had the other one here, but this one was actually a really good one. And before I dig any further, let's just go ahead and get started, and then we can kind of discuss that. All right, so this one was a really good one, and it goes with the genre of, I think, Revenge of the Nerds, right? We get this little guy who just wants to dance. Poor guy, poor kid, right? This is what I think this was junior high. He just wanted to dance, and everybody just wanted to just tell him no in like the harshest way possible. I think that was just like a jerkish way, but this is, I think, a classic revenge of the person who got bullied, and he's gonna get back to you when he gets older. Now, this isn't one of those like lovey-dovey where I think Ryan Reynolds makes one where he was bullied for being, fat and the best friend of the hot cheerleader, and then he got all nice and fit, and he comes back, and everyone's like, "Whoa, no way!" This isn't it, right? This is a horror film, so it's a lot more sadistic because he's back for blood rather than like, look at me, I did better. Look who you rejected when I was a kid, right? It's more like a, you know what? This is for rejecting me, and bam, stabbed, murdered, right? So he obviously, there's two extremes, right? There's the extreme of like, look, I actually did good for myself, and this is what your rejection did for me. While the other one is, you know what, you rejected me, you're gonna get it, right? And what I loved about it is when one of the girls says like, later, right? And when I heard her say, "Oh, later," it just reminded me of what Charlotte LeBeau said. And if you guys don't know who Charlotte LeBeau, go to Disney Plus, watch Princess and the Frog. She tells one of the guys in there that says, when a lady says later, she means not ever, right? So right when she said that, I'm like, oh, poor guy, it's not gonna happen. It ain't gonna happen, right? Right. So at least the good part is he got some action. He got some action. He was able to find one of the girls in the girl group who was a little bit chubbier, and they were able to kind of mac out. It was really cool. I was like, yay, he got someone. But then peer pressure came in. Then came in the bullies, like the big dudes, and they're like, "Ew, you're making out with him." And then she was like, yeah, he came on to me." And boom, they just like ended up like beating him up and all that stuff. So obviously she lied, and so she got what was coming. Um, and so then that's how it ended it. And I think that was that was messed up of her, of course. Like, she could have been like, no, it's me. But again, peer pressure makes people do dumb things. So obviously she got peer pressured. She was in the group of the most popular girls, so she was like the trying to fit in, but yet she wasn't really fitting in because she was more plus sizey. She wasn't really that big, but she was plus sizey compared to the other, scrawny broads there. But my biggest question when all this was happening was like, where were the chaperones? No one stopped the fight, right? No one stopped the kid getting beat up and like kicked and punched on the ground. And I'm just like, where are the chaperones? Like, I know for a fact these school dances had chaperones. I went to multiple school dances. There were adults there watching, like, like a hawk what was going on. Maybe they missed couple things, like very minor stuff, but most of them were very like, hey, where you going? Hey, you can't go in that hallway. Hey, you can't be here. Like Mr. Filch, in at Hogwarts. Like he always was aware of what was happening and what was going on in his grounds, right? So I felt like if there were actual chaperones there should have been a way to stop that and not cause any more damage. Like they could have just made fun of him for making out with a girl and then tossed, like, let's say, whatever liquid that they tossed on him. But then the adults could have came in and be like, hey, that's enough. Like, leave it alone. And then grabbed him and left, right? Like, there you go. Averted, right? Like, problem solved. Any more damage was kind of avoided, but it didn't. They were ended up to throw the liquid on him, beat him up, and no adult intervened. So that's the basis of the story now. We got someone who is going to come for revenge. What I loved about it all is that you don't know who it is yet. You know who they're talking about, right? We already know that this kid who got bullied is going to come back 100%. Because if I were someone who was in a very vengeful type, I would, like in his stead, yeah, I would be like, yeah, this is gonna happen when I get older. Like, I'll plot this revenge, right? It makes sense, right? So, I could see that this is going to happen. Now, who he was when he grew up is the big question where it comes up here, and that's what this I loved about this thriller was you're trying to remember how he looked as a kid, but again, they couldn't get kid actors that looked the same as adult actors at least at the time this movie was made. So we were looking at who he was now as an adult coming back. But I did love that he used the same mask that was used in that Valentine's dance. That made it a lot freakier for the girls because they remembered that dance, right? So years have passed now, and we get our first victim. And before she becomes a victim, this is what I wanted to talk about in this topic about dating, right? So we see, oh my gosh, I already forgot the actress name. But anyway, she is on a date, and the date's not going well, right? And obviously, they both know it's not going well. Like, she just doesn't feel him. I think I don't know, he's acting like a big jerk. But then comes at the end. So then my question to this is who should pay, right? Who should pay on a date? I always believe that the man should pay on a date, but he went like totally like, ooh, like you had, this is an expensive date or expensive meal and you had this and that. Like he started going like Dutch. And I feel like there's two things. A man should pay for the date, but what if the date goes wrong? Like what if like he's like they're both not feeling like it's just a date that is just not good for each other. Should he still pay? Should they split in half? I'm not gonna say that she should pay it all. That's not correct, or the right way to do it as a gentleman. But would it be a discussion? Wouldn't it be like, hey, like this really wasn't good. We should kind of go Dutch. Would that be okay? I don't know. What would you be okay if the date wasn't going? You're like, you know what? I'm gonna pay for my half amount, right? Wouldn't that like kind of leave you like with your washed hands and be like, you know what, this is done? Or would you expect the guy to pay still and be like, well, thanks for the crappy date, right? I don't know. I think that's one thing that is a conversation to have. So if you are thinking, hey, Gio, it should be this way, like the guy should always pay, comment on this and let me know. And if that's the case, then great. That's what we're gonna stick to. The guy always pays, even if it's crappy, even if the guy's just terrible, or even if the girl is just terrible, the guy's always gonna pay. But if it's not, then yeah, that probably could be a discussion made like in between, like if they're being transparent. Hey, by the way, if just something goes sour, we're gonna go Dutch, or you're gonna just pay anyway, right? So I think that's how it should go. But anyway, the one thing I did find like a red flag of the guy is that he spoke in a third person, and I honestly don't. It bothers me when people speak in a third person. I'm not gonna tell someone to stop if they're doing it, but it's so eerie. Like, you don't have to say your name. You don't have to say your name. You know who you are. If we remembered your name, we know who you are. You don't gotta do it unless it's like a joke, right? Uh, but other than that, it's just so annoying. It's like it. I don't know. For me, that's why I was like, "Yep, nope, this dude, he's out." Anyway, my question to this transition was: did she leave the date to go and work at the morgue, or like to do her schoolwork, or was this couple days later? Because it felt to me like the transition was just like I'm leaving. She leaves the day and she's like, you know what? I'm gonna go to a morgue where all the dead bodies are. That's how I felt like the transition was, and I was just like, well, that's a random like segue into like, man, my date sucked. I'm gonna go work with dead people, right? I feel like she did that because she's wanting to focus more on her studies. But maybe the transition was just off. Maybe just the day happened and then she just decided, hey, I'm going to go here. But anyway, it goes back to this. She hears noise while she's there. And she goes to investigate the noise. I don't know why they do this. And I wouldn't investigate the noise. I would stay in the room and be like, is anybody there? Is anybody there? Okay, I'm going to stay here. If someone is actually there, they're going to come and say, hey, there's a light here. And then they're going to look and be like, oh, hey, you're still here. There's the whole conversation. Yes, I am still here in my location. I heard a noise, but I stayed in my location. No. In every horror film, it's like, did you hear that? Let's go check it out. Right? I don't know if there's like no common sense or if it's just like the curiosity really hits someone where it's like, oh, I heard something. Let's go check it. Now, the only time I do that ever is in my own house. If I hear something, of course, I'm gonna check that everybody's safe. You know, like, hey, if there's something there, I'll go check it and I'll make sure that everything's safe. But when it comes to this, and you're like in a spot that it's a huge building, just stay put. 100%. If you stay put, you will survive. You will survive. There's no doubt about it. You will survive. Unless you're like, it's a zombie movie, then yeah, you probably should start heading away from the noise. But yeah, so she went, investigated it, and obviously she ended up dead. Now turbo dating. Oh my gosh. I have never done this. I am 100% glad I never partook of this whole turbo dating stuff. But if you don't know, if you're listening to this and you don't know what turbo dating is, I've heard about it a lot. But turbo dating is where you go to a certain location, like a restaurant or something. It's like a whole group kind of a thing. And you have the women sitting on one side, and they're not the ones who move. And then the men on the other side, right across from them, have about like, believe 3 minutes or a specific time to start the chat, right? So they do 3 minutes of like who they are, or kind of talk to them, kind of just see if it's gonna hit off. Later on, they can like exchange numbers or go on a second date, or go on an actual date after that, right? And then after the time frame ends, the guy goes to the right? So they're switching to the kind of get to know a basis of the other women and see who they match with. Kind of like what Tinder is now, or whichever, like Match.com or whatever that is, where you're kind of like looking at profiles and like swiping and swiping and swiping. This was like the live swiping, right? So the guy would move anyway, but if you didn't really feel him, you're basically swiping. Well, what is that, like right or left? I don't know. You're swiping where it's not interested. And so I I thought that was kind of I'm glad I didn't do it. I thought it would be kind of weird to do that, because you're just moving around, and then hopefully you get a catch, right? Hopefully something works out. Yay, right? Now with the whole digital world, I think you're a lot safer to be like, okay, good, I'll never have to like see this person in person to tell them no. So I think that's made it a lot safer because there's a lot of petty people who are like, wow, I'm a catch, and I've heard a lot of like horror stories about it. Like, they're not scary, but just kind of like people just getting super angry. But other than that, that's what it was. So when you watch this and you were like, what the heck is that? That's what they used to do before technology was ever invented and these apps were. All right. And yes, to confirm, this was back before they had at least they had cell phones, but it was like very like terrible. It was barely being invented. Before it was like this huge brick. Now they have like this small little thing, but most of the time they had to be home. So in this one, they most of the times if the cop was calling them, he was leaving a voicemail in their voicemail box, and they would come home and listen to it if they actually went home and listened to it. Right. That's how it was before. Anybody who's younger than 30, 31, and doesn't know what exactly a voicemail box is, it's the same thing. When someone calls you right now and you mess up, they miss the call and they leave you like a little voice message, and you hear that. Well, before they would leave it in this little cassette tape little box that you would go back and just press play, hear what you missed, and that was it. But it was at your house, so that was the whole thing. So again, now you got these girls who the cops trying to get in contact with, but this time it's more realistic than what it was with like 1990, where somehow Mike was always catching them at the right time. This time, like, he would always miss a call, leave a voicemail, and then call back whenever he had an opportunity or hope that they would call back. So it's a lot of that. What's the word they always called? Like phone tag, right? You would call, you would call, have a missed call, leave a voicemail, then that person would call back, and then you're not home, and then just kind of the whole kind of playing tag until you finally caught each other. Now, this is a question to all the ladies out there. Um, so her water runs out, and I'm not sure if it's just her utilities or anything like that, but her water runs out in mid shower, and for her to get ready for work and wash off her shampoo, she puts her hair in the toilet. Would you ever do that? For me, I don't know how it damages your hair to keep the shampoo or if you like kind of like dry it, but I as a man would have been like, well, I'm just gonna dry off what I can with a towel and just leave it as is. Like, there's some shampoo in there, I'll try to comb it with gel and be on my day. But I'm not sure if leaving the shampoo in your hair would cause any damage. But I think she had a lot of guts sticking in the toilet. Like, even if it's flushed, you pee and poop there. I think that's gross. Like, it's not gonna go away. Like, I don't know. Would you have done that? Would you have been like, man, I gotta get ready for work. This is the only water that I have. I'm gonna do that. If you wouldn't have done it, then you're with me. I wouldn't have done that. But if you are with her, I want to know why. Like, does it really damage your hair if you keep the shampoo on? Does it not? Is it just more like I just don't want to have it in there? I don't know. Just let me know, and I just really want to know exactly on that one. Now, changing subjects onto this, so we pass on, right, and then he or the killer sends the girls some chocolates, some lovely chocolates, and when they take a bite, there's maggots. Maggots are gross. They're so gross. The only experience I had with maggots was when I was a kid. I remember that my parents hadn't taken out the trash yet, and this was me like before I was taking out the trash. It was a lot of like it was really heavy. I wasn't able to lift it, but I remember I started smelling something like terrible, like gross, and I was like, "What is that smell?" And then we finally looked into the garbage can and saw the little worms coming out, and the smell was horrid. It was terrible. And then all of a sudden we have all of them just crawling out, and it was so much like they had just like well, multiplied it. So it was so much. Like, I remember we threw it out. We washed that bin, and it was so gross. So for her to actually have eaten it, I think, holy cow, that's even worse. So now we get the first friend who dies, and they uh they honestly were very, like, not worried about her, because I guess she had told them that she was gonna be traveling. And so she's like, "Hey, I'm gonna travel," and everyone's like, "Okay, cool, go ahead, travel, have fun. We'll see you when you get back." Uh, she didn't even say bye. Like, they already knew she was going off, but being that they were close friends, and I use like air quotations. Obviously, you can't see if you're listening to this, but close friends. She would have probably have said, "All right, guys, I'm leaving," but she didn't. She just was with her boyfriend or whatever the guy was, and then ended up getting shot by the killer Robin Hood because he somehow had arrows. And then she fell, and then they didn't find her. Right, like, she was in the dump, and which I thought was kind of weird, because wouldn't the sanitation people, the people who probably gotten that, wouldn't have figured that out like way before, like, hey, there's a body in here, or maybe not. So that's kind of interesting, that and convenient that he chose that specific moment. So these killers are pretty, like, well planned to be like, okay, at this specific time and moment, I am going to hit her, and she will fall into a trash can where no one will be able to find her ever again until someone reports her missing, or her job says she never arrived. How convenient. I don't think that can be really that planned. I don't think that they have that power to control the uncontrollable, which is all those occurrences happening, unless they're very powerful, and they have paid everybody to be like, hey, we're gonna do this, and they're like, cool, we don't care. Here's how it's gonna happen. Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like they just get so conveniently away with what they've done, right? And so now we have the second girl who died, and now we have the last, I believe, three. So this is gonna be interesting to see how they turn out. And before we continue on with the rest, let's go ahead and take a little break, and then we will discuss just exactly how it gets to the climax of this whole scene, the whole bit, and then who in reality is the killer, right? So without anything, let's go to break. And we're back. All right, so now we're getting the understanding of how this little chubby girl, who is now an adult, right, is was included in the group. Her daddy's rich. She's a rich girl. So in ways of the whole dynamic of it. The other girls were skinny and rich, and then she was just rich, so she had to be included. At least that's why you notice when she was in her house, her big house, she's gonna be starting this party, and that party has like loads and loads and loads and loads of room, and food and everything else. So it's just gonna be a huge bash. So that's where I was like, makes sense why you were included in this group and still made fun of. Like, they were going to make fun of you. It doesn't matter if you had the money. But if you weren't looking like them, you were included but not. So it makes a lot of sense how that worked out. But the funny thing is that her boyfriend tells her, like, hey, I gotta make a call, or I gotta do this thing. I'll be right back. And he was downstairs in, like, by the pool, and doing whatever call he had to do with whatever business he was doing, which seemed pretty sketchy, especially with that other girl who showed up saying that she owed him money and that he was just going to bleed her dry because that's what he does. So first and foremost, I believe that guy was probably like a Slav. No, sorry about that. He wasn't good with money, so I believe he wasn't going to do really good in that part. However, it was just very convenient for her to be like, hey, like she intercoms him, which is again messed up. Like I don't know, like was he just a fuck buddy or was he someone you really liked? Later on, she like is sad that he's not there, but at that moment, she's like, hey, can you go check on this for me? Like, what? Are you serious? Like, okay. Which he gets pissed too, which he's like, oh, now I'm part of the staff. Well, give it, he is staying there without paying rent, so, like, low life, per se. And then the killer kills him to, like, get out all the variables, right? Kill the dudes, and that way it's just left to kill the women. And what I feel is very convenient is that during all that time, like, the staff, again, this killer is very convenient. The staff... anybody that was getting the preparation for the party would have gone downstairs, would have checked something. Well, they would have found some way because they had a lot of people walking in and out, and yet again they didn't notice anything, and so she's just sad because Campbell hasn't shown up, but yet like. She didn't see him leave, per se. She called him out and asked to do that. So she could have been like, let me go check if he's down there. And they could have gone and checked, and they could have seen, all these evidence of something happening. But no, she didn't care. She was getting ready for her party. So who gives a fuck about that dude, right? Like, whatevs. He's going to come back because he loves me. And then, oh, I'm going to bitch about it because he didn't really love me. And it's like, bro, like, one, be more, like, not active, but what's the word I'm thinking of? Oh, my gosh. I'm trying a blank right now. Be more proactive in where the people at. Know where they're at. Look at your friend. Your friend died, and it's in the trash can, and supposedly you guys are like, oh, yeah, she's out on a trip. Didn't even say, like, oh, yeah, she said bye before she left. Like... Again, you can tell that their probably friend dynamic was a toxic friend dynamic rather than an actual real friend dynamic, and that's what leads them to their demise. Like that's where it all ends. So now we're at the party. She's all sad that he didn't show up. We get this other girl that, of course, has her boyfriend that is trying to recover from drinking. And then you have the one girl that's like a whore, but not per se. Like she has standards. She rejected the cop and said like, no, how dare you, squeeze bag. But then she's like willing to jump whomever she meets. So that was always very interesting to see. Like, okay, so you have standards, but don't. And maybe it was disrespectful of me to call her a whore, but if you saw the way she was acting pretty promiscuous. So the fact that she chose, well, I think it's fine for her to choose it, but I think it was just very weird, her double standard on that one. However, now she meets the one dude who they met during the fast dating pool, right? And that guy ended up being like a jerk, exactly kind of what she was portraying. Again, she was portraying someone promiscuous and someone that really was open to things, and so he came out and was a dick about it, and she ended up just leaving him, which I really applauded her for having a better standard. Maybe she probably should have thought of not doing that. But the crazy part is she ends up dying, and and I thought the weirdest way of her to die was to be electrocuted. Like, the only thing he did was lock her in the hot tub, tried to screw in like to hit her, and then was like, you know what, this isn't working. I barely hit her. Take this, and then throws it, and she gets electrified and dead. And again, no one from the staff. Like this girl is rich. She's having a party, and she's got staff to watch everywhere, to clean everything. Or maybe they just said, hey, don't worry about these locations, it doesn't matter. Maybe that was it, right? Maybe they're just like, it doesn't matter if anybody's in there, I don't give a shit, like, we're just gonna do this. If that's the case, well, then that's why there wasn't any staff really looking into it until like probably the party's over and they're cleaning and they're like, oh, look, dead bodies. Look at this, holy cow. Well, and now the one girl that was trying to find her money because of the one other guy, that Campbell, I think the one who never showed up again. She comes back, and in Spanish we have this one thing, por metiche, right? For being nosy. She got killed because she was like, I'm gonna walk around this whole house. I'm gonna try to find him. I'm gonna steal all this stuff because I deserve my money. And then the killer's like, huh. We got no witnesses and what do you call that? Like, no loose ends, right? Which ended up getting her killed. So, another rule in all horror film is don't meddle where you're not supposed to, right? Don't be nosy. Don't just go where you're not supposed to be, right? Now, one of the things that got me super annoyed in this, and it annoys me a lot in all horror films, and most of the times in just a lot of the films, is the one who's the most ready, the one who's supposed to be like the catcher of the killer, or like the policeman or the expert and all the things, is always the one who ends up dying quickly. Like, we didn't see the death of the detective at all. But the fact that she was able to find him in his head, like he was beheaded and all that stuff, it just always bothers me. It's like, these guys are like, when it comes up to the movies, these experts that know what's going on and they know how to survive. Or you got these cops who are like the best cops. I don't think he was a bit of a sleaze, right? Trying to hit on that other girl, but when you look at the fact that he at least was a cop who could kind of fend for himself, like I don't think he struggled as much. He died really quick and was found, right? And that's just, now it's up to them to fend for themselves. So it always leaves whoever is like the sole survivor, or whoever is the person who is being attacked, it always leaves them alone to kind of fend for themselves, and they always end up winning, which is, again, ridiculous. And so now we have the last girl who's gonna be ready to fight this person, and then she doesn't know how to load a gun. And I believe gun safety is something that should be taught. It's something that I still need to learn. Well, I've learned in Scouts, but I think it should be something taught very well in case of certain circumstances. Hopefully not this type of circumstances, but it's good to learn. So obviously she didn't know it much, and I know she loaded the gun, but if I'm correct, with most guns you have to kind of cock it, right, to get the bullet inside and ready, and she didn't do that. So the fact that the gun actually shot at the end was a miracle, or maybe that specific gun didn't need it. So if there's any gun enthusiasts who were watching this movie and were like, oh no, that's how the gun works, great, cool. And if not, you probably like me, like, hey, she just put the ammunition in, right? Like, she just put in the magazine and didn't do anything with it. Like, just, okay, the gun should be ready. And I'm like, no, I feel like there's one more step you're missing. So learn your steps, get certified. Don't be a crazy gun nut, but at least, know the safeties of it. That will keep your life. And then we get the twist at the end. Oh my gosh. So she's getting attacked by the killer. And then they roll down the stairs. And then luckily, Angel, or I forgot whoever that name, but he was an Angel, and he was in a lot of other ones. But that the one boyfriend who was a drunk ends up shooting the person. They unmask it, and it ends up being Dorothy. Oh my gosh, Dorothy was the real killer. She was after her friends for probably always, being bullies to her. Which, if it were her, I would really say, congrats, you got your revenge. Good job. You waited, many years to finally do it, and it probably took a lot of planning, which then would make a lot of sense of how she would have that, the money and the power to be able to coincidentally get them at the right moment at the right time. But then at the end we see Angel. I'm just gonna call him Angel because I already forgot. Then we're gonna see Adam. Sorry, I even had it in my notes. Well, anyway, but then you see Adam when he's hugging the last girl. He's bleeding off of his nose, and so that led to lead that maybe it wasn't Dorothy, it was Adam. So who do you guys believe it was? All right, that's the true question. Who was it? Was it Dorothy or was it Adam? My honest opinion, it was Adam. 100% it was Adam. Adam was the kid that was bullied. They called him, they knew his name back then. But after he had left and he had gone away, wherever he went, he probably switched schools because I would have switched schools. Holy cow, what they did with him was terrible. But they never saw him again, so they don't remember his face. They only remember his name and what they did to him. But after that, he was gone for years. This was like what, 15, almost 20, like 15ish years, and so they didn't even know who he was. So I feel like Adam was the kid who got bullied, left, did whatever he did, plotted his revenge, changed his name, changed his whole life, changed his career, did everything that he needed to kind of get in the mix of the girls again by dating one of them, right? And then it would actually coincide with his addiction, right? He had to drink because he has a lot of baggage. He was bullied, and he's constantly with one of them that was the bully. So I feel like that kind of connects into like, wow, he's always a drunk. It's like, yeah, he has some things he's got to work through. However, he planned it out well, and I think it just turned out perfect for him because no one ever suspected him because he was just a guy. However, if it were him, and if it really were him, the cops should have been able to find more information on him, right? They actually went and talked to him and interviewed him. They interviewed all the boyfriends, right, or the people they were dating, to make sure it wasn't them or there wasn't any connection. They should have found out like his past. They would have known, like, wait a minute, like, your name is Adam so and so. Look through the system and be like, you're only appearing at this time, and this is the 90s still, so I know technology has gotten a little bit better by that time, but they at least could have been like, this is not suiting up, and then like been able to kind of figure out like, oh, wait a minute, back in the day you were called, and then be like, oh my gosh, it's him. But I don't think they were that thorough. They're just like, hey, are you a killer? And he's like, no, this is what I do for a job. And everybody around him was like, yeah, that's him. They're like, yay. And they just left it to that, right? Like, I don't think they really dug deep into the boyfriends. So if they didn't dug deep, then they would have never figured out that Adam was the kid who got bullied. And so now he was able to get his revenge. However, he didn't kill the last one. He stayed with her. And I think that kind of ended the end, right? All the other girls have died. And so now he's with that one girl and will never be suspected of who it was, because they're going to just blame it on Dorothy. Like, Dorothy was the one who killed us all, right? Because even at the party, they ended up finding out that the one friend that left never made it. Like, the work said, no, she never arrived. So then they're like, oh my gosh, she got killed too. And then later on, like, that was it, right? That was all their worry. Like, oh, our friend got killed again. No, whatever, So if Adam were the killer, he won, right? If it was Dorothy, she kind of won. She did most of the damage, and then still had one survivor, unfortunately. So I would say like close to winning, but not, right? But if it were Adam, he won. He definitely won, and it was a great way to end because it left you with the cliffhanger of is it really him or not? My opinion, it was him. If you think otherwise, let's go ahead. I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna put a little thing, like a little thing in the chat, and you guys go ahead and tell me if it was Adam or if it was Dorothy, or do you think it's someone else? Right? Because there have been someone else, and it just occasionally, just hit Adam had a bloody nose at the time. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Valentine was actually a really good thriller that I saw when, again, in my youth, and it was really good to be able to enjoy and the way that this killer planned his kills and made it to the end. A really good revenge story. And other than that, I will see you guys next time.